Daisy, to kick us off.
Thank you. So sorry, I do have notes. I'm not good at speaking off the cuff. But when Lee and I started talking about this over the summer, or before the summer actually, we were talking about well-being and positive psychology and what we're doing at schools to build resilience. But after the summer we've all had, I think it's actually more important to have a conversation about the next generation of Australians and how their political journeys are starting and how they're building. I think as a society we are divided in what we expect and want of teenagers, and that there's also a great divide in what teenagers expect of their leaders. And I can tell you, having spoken to a lot of Year 10 girls last year, their expectations of leaders at the moment is pretty low. A lot of the development of a teenager's identity is happening at school. We're teaching them how to construct arguments, how to write essays, and we're teaching them that the skills they're learning for their HSC are actually going to be skills that will help them be brilliant citizens. I think we're in a very interesting conflict at the moment where on the one side we've got PISA scores where Finland is constantly beating us, being slammed in the media, and also this argument that you don't need to know anything, that Google and Siri and Alexa are there for you. But what I think we all agree on is that we need critical thinking skills. We want teenagers to be able to think and to be able to argue and to be able to discern media sources. But then it seems like at the same time, there are certain people in our society, be it some politicians or commentators, criticising teenagers for having a voice and taking part in democracy, and for using those critical thinking skills that we all think are really important. It's almost like we're teaching you how to drive and then getting angry if you get near a car. At the same time, we need to teach kids, and I mean all kids from the minute they see a screen, how to discern sources. The more and more sources are becoming unreliable or sourced through the internet, students don't know what they're reading. Algorithms are owning their searches, or they're only hearing what their friends are telling them and believing it, and it's building that echo chamber from a much younger age. And I know this because students tell me something's true because they read it in the Daily Mail. Our own ability to critically analyse sources is the most important thing, and I should at this point say that the ABC Education website has brilliant resources for teaching media literacy. There was a great article in The Good Weekend last year about teenagers being exposed to the extreme right on Facebook and repeating what they're reading back to their parents. Until recently, if a student ever said something in a class that had a clear political position, as a teacher, you generally assume that was coming from the kitchen table. But now you don't always know it's coming from a safe family place. It's coming from total strangers. And that's something I think as educators we really need to learn how to navigate. Dr. Emily Lovegrove said that teenagers have always got their information and their identity from friends. While the internet hasn't actually altered behaviour in teens, it's amplified and facilitated that instinct to find a peer group they identify with. And as the old New Yorker cartoon says, on the internet nobody knows you're a dog, but in this case a Russian bot. We also need to talk about how students are developing their political skills. And I don't mean their identities, I mean their skills. We need to work with students on how to have political discussions, how to be respectful in debates, and do so knowing that if there are 25 different students in a classroom, there are 25 different political contexts. This is because the teenage brain is still developing. From the age of 12 to 26, their neuroplasticity is not necessarily growing because their heads are already pretty big, but they're being moulded by their environment. And if that environment is unsafe and unreliable, it can be shaped quite dangerously. And this is the first generation of teenagers that we're seeing this onslaught of unreliable media through the internet. It definitely wasn't an issue when I was a teenager. So by adding positive language around values and respectful debate, then that's good for their brains and hopefully for the future of society. We need to teach them how to be respectful online and in person and model positive interactions. At St Catherine's we do a lot of work around two of our values of integrity and respect and provide them the language for having these discussions. But it's very hard to tell students to behave with integrity and respect when debating each other, when that certainly isn't how most politicians behave in Parliament or in the media. So when I was about 19, so not much older than you guys, I was waiting for Dad outside the Commonwealth Parliamentary offices one day for him to finish a meeting. And Wayne Swan walked in at the same time as Dad was coming out. And I honestly got ready for some argy-bargy. I was wondering why there weren't more bloodstains on the carpet in this hallway. But they actually just had this chat and it was quite civil, and I remember thinking, why do you all act like you hate each other when you actually are quite nice to each other in a private? If the behaviour of MPs in question times is setting the standard for political debate, then we've got a real problem. And finally, I think politicians need to take teenagers more seriously. The most cynical reason for this is that if you are 15, you are voting in the next election. I think politicians telling teenagers they shouldn't have opinions or partake in political events demeans them. Instead, they should ask questions that give them a chance to learn about politics and be a champion for them rather than a force working against them. And on that, I will hand over to the teenagers.